You've probably seen it before, your cat sitting quietly by the bowl, staring at you in a way that feels almost questioning. Not impatient, not demanding, just waiting. And in that small moment, something feels off, like there's a need they can't explain and you can't quite see. Most people think feeding a cat is simple. Fill the bowl, walk away, job done. But what if something as ordinary as that choice is quietly shaping how your cat feels every single day? Not just their hunger, but their energy, their comfort, even the way they exist in your home. Because the truth is, from the very first day you switch what goes into that bowl, something begins to change. It starts in a place you can't see. Inside their body, where everything has been running just a little off balance for a long time. Have you ever noticed how your cat barely drinks water? The bowl stays full for hours, sometimes the whole day. It's easy to assume they're just picky, or maybe a little lazy. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Your cat isn't broken. They're built this way. Long before they curled up on your couch or followed you from room to room, their ancestors survived in places where water wasn't something you could rely on. They didn't walk up to a bowl and take a sip. They hunted. And everything they needed, every drop of hydration, came from what they caught. That instinct never left them. Even now, sitting in your home, their body still behaves like it's out there, surviving. So when a cat eats dry food every day, something subtle but important begins to happen. Their body is forced to adapt to something it was never designed for. The food is dry, almost empty of moisture, and suddenly their system has to work harder, pulling water from wherever it can just to keep things moving. It's quiet, invisible, but it adds up. Their body starts running on less than it needs. And then, you introduce wet food. From the very first meal, something shifts. It's not dramatic. Your cat doesn't suddenly act different or rush to the bowl with excitement. But inside, their body recognizes something familiar. Something it remembers. Moisture. Real, natural hydration, built into the food itself just like it was always meant to be. And that's when things begin to ease. Their system doesn't have to fight as hard anymore. The strain that was always there just beneath the surface starts to fade. Their body finally gets what it has been quietly missing, not in small sips from a bowl, but in the way it was always supposed to. It's almost like a kind of relief. A silent correction. Their kidneys don't have to push as much. Their internal balance begins to stabilize. Everything starts flowing the way it should have from the beginning. And even though you can't see it happening, this one change begins to affect everything else that comes after. Because when the body stops struggling, it starts healing. And maybe the most surprising part is this. Your cat won't suddenly start drinking less water in a noticeable way. There's no obvious signal, no clear moment where you think, this is working. But inside, something important has already changed. They're no longer running on empty. And that single shift becomes the foundation for everything that follows. Because once their body finally feels supported instead of strained, it starts responding in ways you can actually see. Changes that don't just happen internally but show up in their shape, their energy, and even the way they look at you. But that's where things take a turn most people never expect. Because the next change isn't just about health. It's about something every cat owner struggles with, and almost always misunderstands. For a long time you might have believed your cat just really loves food. The way they follow you into the kitchen, the way their eyes lock onto every movement of your hands, the way they start meowing before you even touch the bowl. Can feel almost dramatic, like they're obsessed, like nothing is ever enough. And maybe at some point you even wondered, am I overfeeding them? But what if that behavior isn't about greed at all? What if it's actually the opposite? Because behind that urgency, behind those early morning wake-ups and those impatient cries, there's often something much quieter happening. Your cat isn't full. Not really. Dry food has a way of filling the bowl, but not the need. It passes through their system quickly, light in moisture, heavy in things their body doesn't quite know how to use. And so, even after eating, something feels incomplete. Their stomach might not be empty, but their body still acts like it is. So they go back. They ask again. They keep searching for something they can't quite reach. And over time, that turns into a pattern. A rhythm of never quite being satisfied. Always waiting for the next meal as if the last one never really counted. But when wet food becomes part of their daily life, that pattern begins to break. Not all at once. Not in a single meal. But slowly, quietly, it starts to change. The texture is different. The weight of it sits differently in their body. It lingers longer, not just physically but in the way their system responds to it. There's something about it that feels complete in a way they haven't felt before. And for the first time in a while, they eat and then they stop. Not because the bowl is empty, but because they are. That frantic edge begins to soften. The urgency fades into something calmer, something more natural. Mealtime stops feeling like a race and starts feeling like a moment. Something steady. Something predictable. You might notice it in small ways at first. They don't rush you as much. They don't circle the kitchen with the same restless energy. Maybe they even leave a little behind and walk away, something they never used to do. And that's when it really hits you. They're not starving anymore. They're satisfied. But the changes don't stop there, because once their body begins to feel balanced on the inside, it starts to show on the outside too. And one of the first places it reveals itself is something you've probably touched 1,000 times without thinking. Their fur. At first it's easy to miss. A slight softness when you run your hand along their back. A smoother glide beneath your fingers. But then, over time, it becomes impossible to ignore. That dry, rough texture that once felt normal starts to disappear. The shedding that seemed endless begins to slow down. Less fur on your clothes, less left behind on the couch. And in its place, something else emerges, a kind of quiet shine, a softness that almost doesn't feel real. It's not about grooming. Not really. You didn't change the brush. You didn't suddenly start doing anything differently. But your cat did. Or rather, their body did. Because what's happening on the inside is finally being reflected on the outside. The nutrients that once struggled to find their place are now being used the way they were always meant to be. Not just to survive, but to maintain, to restore, to bring everything back into balance. Their coat becomes a signal. A kind of truth. And without saying a word, your cat is showing you that something deeper has shifted. Something real. But just when it starts to feel like everything is finally falling into place, there's one part of this story most people never see coming. A small detail. Easy to overlook. And yet, it's the one thing that can quietly undo all of it if you're not careful. By now, it almost feels like you've unlocked something. Your cat is calmer. More settled. Their body feels better even if they can't tell you that in words. And in those quiet moments, when they curl up next to you, when they eat and simply walk away instead of begging for more, you can feel it. Something has changed. Something real. And that's exactly why this next part matters more than anything else. Because it doesn't look like a problem. It doesn't smell like one either. In fact, most people never even realize it's happening. It usually starts in the simplest way. You open a can, serve the food, and your cat takes a few bites. Then they walk off. Maybe they get distracted, maybe they just aren't that hungry yet. You don't think much of it. After all, it's normal, right? They'll come back later. But what happens in that quiet space, between the first bite and the second, is something you can't see. The moment wet food is exposed to the air, it begins to change. Slowly at first, then faster than you'd expect. The same moisture that makes it so perfect for your cat also makes it fragile. Time starts working against it. And while it may look exactly the same sitting there in the bowl, something invisible is building. Something that doesn't announce itself, doesn't warn you, doesn't give off a clear signal. Your cat comes back, takes another bite, and you would never know the difference. That's what makes it so easy to miss. Because unlike dry food, which can sit out all day without much consequence, wet food doesn't forgive neglect. It asks for attention. It asks for awareness. And when that's missing, even something good can quietly turn into something harmful. This is where many owners unknowingly go wrong. Not in what they choose, but in how they handle it. The truth is simple, but it carries weight. Wet food isn't meant to sit and wait. It's meant to be eaten, or removed. Because after a short window of time, especially in a warm room, it stops being the safe, nourishing meal you intended it to be. And the hardest part is, you won't always see the moment that shift happens. There's no clear line. No obvious sign. Just a silent change. And if your cat is the kind that grazes, taking a few bites, walking away, then returning later, that's where the risk grows. Not because you're doing anything wrong on purpose, but because their natural habits don't always match the nature of the food. So a small adjustment makes all the difference. You begin to watch the time, not just the bowl. If they don't finish, you take it away. Not as a punishment, not as a restriction, but as protection. The leftover food is no longer something to save, it's something to replace. And the rest? It's handled with care. Stored properly. Kept fresh. Treated like something that matters. Because it does. Even the temperature plays a role in a way most people don't think about. Food taken straight from the fridge carries a kind of coldness your cat instinctively resists. It doesn't feel natural to them. It doesn't resemble what their body recognizes as real nourishment. But with a small change, just a little warmth, just enough to bring it closer to what they expect, everything shifts again. They lean in more. They eat with ease. Feels right. And when you step back and look at the full picture, it becomes clear. Wet food isn't just a better option. It's a more honest one. It aligns with what your cat has always been, even before they became part of your life. It supports their body in ways that go beyond the surface, touching everything from how they feel physically, to how they behave, to how they connect with you. But like anything powerful, it asks for something in return. Attention, understanding, a willingness to notice the small things. Because in the end, it's never just about feeding your cat. It's about truly caring for them. And sometimes, the difference between the two is everything.